Continuing now with tonight's special topic, the Hunter Biden laptop, what it means, what this investigation is going to look like, and more importantly, what really happened in October of 2020 when this story first broke. As promised, Tony Shaffer now joins us. He, of course, a former retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, but specifically an intelligence officer, CIA-trained intelligence officer. Tony, thank you again for joining us.
Hey, Larry, good to be here with you. Thanks.
So there's a couple of things that I want to delve into, two major things. That had to do with the media reaction, and then sort of connected to the media reaction, this infamous letter that was put out by over 50 intelligence community officials. In fact, I think we should start with that, because that then sort of fueled the media's reaction as they just repeated this Russian disinformation line over and over again. How does a letter like this even come about, Tony? As a former intelligence official yourself.
Yeah. Well, there's a community out there, Larry. Just let's summarize them as the intelligence officers who would gladly work for Darth Vader, given the chance to go to the dark side at any time. And that's what it is. I mean, just look at the list. And these are the folks who are essentially, they're paid to do whatever the left says for them to do. And I'm saying this because credible intelligence officers who I know and I associate with, to include, during that period, my voice as a, last time I checked, the congressional record talks about my career, that I'm a senior intelligence officer. Those who were actually looking at this with a rational, let's actually analyze the details point of view were shunned and literally silenced. So this was a setup. Those folks were essentially in some form paid or were already signed aboard. They were presented this opportunity. They all signed up as kind of this, again, Darth Vader group going into the dark side. Yeah. And those of us who were saying, we have access to it, we've seen it, we want to talk about it, we're silenced. And that's why they were able to get it out there.
But we see this so often too. And then let's just, a couple of the prominent names on there. Your old pal, James Clapper, who was the director, he was the director of national intelligence under Barack Obama. John Brennan, the former CIA director under Barack Obama. And there are other names on this list of intelligence officials who now currently work in the Biden administration. So, job well done, right? They all used this weasel language. They said things like, this laptop story has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. It appears to be, so that gives them some wiggle room. But the appearance, Tony, is that they used their clearance to actually analyze the data and look at the information. And you're telling me they never actually saw it?
No, of course they didn't, Larry. I mean, this is one of those grand illusions. They never saw any classified data. And that's why when they get behind closed doors and are put in front of Congress or committees and ask a question directly, they can say, oh, I was just stating my opinion. Right. That's their get out of jail free card. And let me say something about Jim Clapper. I've worked for Jim Clapper. Jim Clapper, I have a letter. He promoted me to GS-12 when I was a civilian operative with the U.S. Air Force. Jim Clapper is the most politically reliable, pliable intelligence officer I've ever met. If he's working for someone and his principal says, hey, Jim, can you tell me that the moon is made of cheese? You will have a detailed report 5 ways from Sunday telling you it's made of cheese. I'm just telling you, that's the way it is. And that's why he and John Brennan and all these other guys were signed aboard. And again, people like me, Larry, in the contrast, they're saying, no. We've seen the hard drive. We have the evidence. We want to present it. And because we were going with a fact-based perspective, the media wouldn't talk to us, to include members of the mainstream media who are now saying, oh, this is verified. We tried to provide them the same access, the same details back then, and the leadership above them would not permit them to look at it.
Yeah, and there were news outlets that verified this. It's very easy forensically to verify information on a hard drive and data, and that was done.
That's correct.
So here's what happens. This letter comes out. Politico runs with it. It says this is Russian disinformation. And then at that point forward, listen, I'm a member of the media. I run a radio program and now this TV program. When something like that happens, I'm telling you, even though I have a built-in, I wear my politics on my sleeve, I have an agenda, I'll admit it. I will even pause and say, well, hold on a minute. The last thing I want to do is parrot some Russian disinformation and be a tool of the Putin's propaganda. So then I will call people like Toad. I will call other people and say, what's really going on here? Well, I want you to just take a quick little montage. Take a look at this montage from Tom Elliott, does great work at Grabian. Look at what the media did.
Go ahead.
No, I probably best I don't. Obviously, we're not going with the New York Post story right now on Hunter Biden.
This is really one of the stupidest October surprises I've ever seen.
It helps to really view this as storytelling, not so much as news coverage, but as political entertainment.
NPR explained, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories.
Who even thought to make that story up?
It's a story that many intelligence experts say has all the hallmarks of a foreign interference campaign.
It looks like it's tied to Vladimir Putin in Moscow.
This is a Russian intelligence disinformation campaign.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Russian intelligence.
Rudy Giuliani was not fed passively Russian disinformation. He ordered it off the menu.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
And he's in the midst of a scandal.
He's not.
And he's taking... Of course he is, Leslie.
We should note Hunter Biden isn't running for president. That argument has been debunked.
There is no evidence that Joe Biden did anything wrong.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
It just lacks credibility.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that digging and start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you.
We're not going to do. That's my favorite part. This is literally the job of the media.
Right.
This is they're basically trashing their own First Amendment that protects them by not actually pursuing this story, Tony. When you see that, and when you know, listen, you work with people in the media, you help us out sometimes and advise us on stories like this. What is your reaction to that when you see exactly how the media did precisely what those 51 intelligence officials wanted them to do?
Well, they use fact-free descriptors, debunked. Really, how was it debunked? Nobody pushes back on that. Has all the earmarks. Really? When I talk about Larry, we've known each other a long time. I will state for you the facts as I understand them that are verifiable. I don't say there's earmarks. There's like, no, this is what I understand it to be.
Oh, yeah. So I can tell you, sometimes I want Tony to say, like, okay, what you're really saying is this. And you're like, no, I'm not saying that. Because I want you to walk down the path a little more for me.
Right. So that's the other thing that distinguishes, I think, people like me who actually want to tell the truth and try to present it for what it is versus the folks who will always use these soft, but very distinctive words that are meant to create doubt. I'm trying to verify things. They're trying to create doubt. And that whole montage indicated to me and showed to the American public that they made the story radioactive, even for people like you who had to take a second look and say, hey, is this real or not?
But here's the irony. Think about it for a minute. We were told, as a conservative talk radio host, I was told that if I repeat the Hunter Biden story that the New York Post reported, that I would be a propaganda tool of Vladimir Putin and the Russian government, right? But Christiane Amanpour and Joe Scarborough and Brian Stelter and Leslie Stahl, everybody else you saw in that montage, they actually were the propaganda tools, but it was our government or officials who used to work in our government. They were doing their bidding.
I've said from day one on the whole Russia collusion narrative thing, Larry, all the left, to include Hillary Clinton, were the greatest allies of Vladimir Putin because they became the vectors of the chaos he wanted to sow. And this is another example of that very thing.
Perfect example. Yeah, that's the other thing. Not only are they doing the propaganda of our government to try to squelch this, but they're elevating Vladimir Putin. It makes Vladimir Putin look so powerful.
Doing his job every day.
Real fast. We've only got a minute left. Why are there no repercussions? Every single one of those 51 people who signed that letter and said this is Russian disinformation, they still have their clearance. Many of them have government jobs. They should be ridiculed and shamed out of the industry. Why not?
Well, I don't know, because this is like their third strike. Every one of those individuals you mentioned have messed up big time in the past. And I would ask you and your audience to consider, my record too. I've been right more times than wrong. And I think we have to get back to holding those who tell us stories accountable. If they're lying, they should be shunned. They should be fired. But unfortunately, Larry, the bulk of the industry, no offense to you, the bulk of the industry, mainstream media, still will go with whatever the flow is regarding the state, regarding Joe Biden. And that's got to stop. There's got to be an independence reestablished. You guys are independent. Others are independent. But that independence does not exist except for a small constellation of very devoted truth tellers like you and the folks I deal with. So I hope you all can prevail in this.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, intelligence officer, CIA trained. Thanks for being here and thanks for shedding light on this story tonight. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.